I was supposed to be fixing an air conditioner, but instead I watched my wife kiss another man in a motel parking lot. That moment shattered everything I thought I knew about my life, and what came next no one could have predicted. Hey everyone, thanks for dropping by again. I really appreciate you being here. Today I've got a new story to share, one that still stings, but I think it's time I talk about it. So here goes. I've never liked the rain. There I was, sitting alone in my work truck, watching fat droplets hammer down on the windshield, the sound of them pounding against the roof like a never-ending drumline. This wasn't one of those soft summer showers people romanticize about. It was a full-on downpour. Sheets of rain blew sideways in the wind, turning the parking lot into a shallow, fast-moving river. It wasn't technically a storm warning, but it sure felt like one of those alerts they interrupt your favorite shows for. I leaned back and let out a long sigh, glancing up at the rust-stained roof of the diner, where an old air conditioning unit was supposed to be waiting on me. There was no way I was going up there in this mess. It could wait. Honestly, I shouldn't have even been there in the first place. Wednesdays were usually my Allentown days, but this was labeled an urgent call, and apparently I was the only one both qualified and crazy enough to drive all the way out here for a repair job. The place was a rundown roadside motel, the kind with doors that open right onto the parking lot and paint flaking off in long curling strips. You've probably driven past one just like it 100 times without giving it a second look. The only reason it hadn't gone under yet was the dirt cheap room prices, though if I had to guess, I'd say the attached diner saw more foot traffic than the motel itself. So there I sat, engine off, heater humming, watching as a couple of the motel's housekeepers huddled under the awning trying to stay dry, clearly waiting for late guests to check out so they could get started. I wasn't in a rush, just killing time. Then a beige Volkswagen Beetle pulled into a spot not too far from me. Convertible top. Looked like it used to be a fun little car before the wear and tear set in. I leaned forward, squinting through the foggy glass and torrential rain, trying to make out the plate. But the visibility was awful and I couldn't get a clear look. Still, something in my stomach churned. That car, it looked exactly like Amanda's. Amanda. My wife. We'd been married just shy of 20 years. We had 2 daughters, Colleen, who was 18 and about to head off to Kutztown University, and Brenda, 16, smack in the middle of what I could only call a full-fledged Gothic rebellion. Black eyeliner, torn fishnets, poetry about graves, you get the idea. The 2 of them couldn't be more different if they tried. Amanda and I, we went way back. High school sweethearts. Grew up in the same small town, ran in the same circles. We'd been through a lot, good times and bad, but I thought we were still in it together. At least, I thought so then. I hadn't really known her until she took that job waiting tables at the local diner. Funny how you can spend years near someone without ever truly noticing them. Back in school I kept to myself. I had a pretty severe stutter, and just the thought of speaking in front of people made my chest tighten. It made me quiet, almost invisible. Teachers never called on me and the other kids. They just assumed I was slow or not quite right in the head. But I wasn't. I understood everything. And I could always tell when I was being picked on. Sometimes I'd push back, get into a fight or two, and that usually stopped it, at least for a while. It was during the second half of my HVAC certification program when I finally worked up the courage to talk to Amanda. I'd eaten at that diner more times than I could count, always sitting in the same booth, always ordering the same meal. I think I was trying to gather the nerve. When I finally did ask her out, I didn't say much. My words came out stiff and slow, but she smiled like it didn't bother her at all. She never rushed me, never made me feel ashamed. She just talked more to fill the silence, and somehow that made it easier for me to talk too. We dated for a while before things got serious. There was a lot of time spent just getting to know each other, no pressure, no games. When our relationship did become physical, I was pretty green, but Amanda handled everything with a kind of ease that made me feel like I didn't need to be embarrassed. She never said anything, but I had the sense that I wasn't her first. That didn't matter to me. What mattered was that she was there, with me. We got married not long after I finished my program. It was a simple ceremony at the courthouse, just the 2 of us and a couple witnesses. I'd already landed a decent job by then, earning more than I expected right out of school. Amanda kept waitressing for a bit, but when she got pregnant with our first, Kaylin, she left work to focus on being a full-time mom. We didn't have a flashy life, but it was stable, comfortable. We had enough. And for a long time that was more than I ever thought I'd get. But back in that rain-soaked parking lot, my focus never left the beige Beetle. I squinted again trying to get a better look at the license plate, but the storm just kept hammering away, blurring everything. Then a sleek silver Mercedes pulled into the spot next to it. A man stepped out, holding a large umbrella over his head, and walked straight toward the Beetle. I held my breath. He opened the driver's door, and Amanda stepped out. My heart dropped. She smiled up at him like I hadn't seen in years. Then she wrapped her arms around him. They walked, almost skipped, through the rain toward the motel's awning, laughing like this was some kind of romantic movie scene. He folded the umbrella as they reached the door, and I watched him pull a room key out of his coat pocket. My fists tightened on the steering wheel. I didn't even notice how hard I was gripping it until my knuckles started to ache. I stayed parked there for more than 2 hours, barely moving. At some point the rain let up, but I hardly noticed. The world outside had gone quiet, but inside me, everything was spinning. When they finally came back out of the motel, they were still smiling, still lost in whatever bubble they had built for themselves. She kissed him on the cheek before they got into her car. Not a shy, uncertain gesture. No, it was practiced, easy, like something she'd done 100 times before. It was the kind of kiss that belongs to a wife and her husband. She never even glanced in my direction. Not once. My truck was right there, but it was like I didn't exist. Every bit of her focus, her attention was on him. I felt completely gutted watching them drive away. The AC unit? I didn't touch it. Never even opened the back of my van. I drove straight back toward the shop with that same numb feeling, riding shotgun the whole way. My boss was already waiting for me when I got there. He looked agitated, ready to launch into a rant about unfinished jobs and wasted hours. But I cut him off before he could say much. I handed him my resignation. He stared at me stunned. Didn't raise his voice. Didn't ask why. After a moment he just nodded, slowly, like someone trying to process a blow they didn't see coming. There was disappointment in his eyes, sure, but no judgment. He could tell whatever this was, it ran deep. I went straight to the bank next. Cashed out my final paycheck and then pulled nearly everything from our accounts. Left just enough to avoid raising red flags. I took $6,000, leaving her the rest, which wasn't much. The house savings account? Gone. The college fund we'd been building for years? Drained. I knew Colleen would be all right. Her tuition had already been paid for the next year at Kutztown. Brenda, though. Her grades were circling the drain, and she'd been on a collision course with reality for a while now. I honestly never expected college would be her path. By the time I got home, the rain had stopped completely. The quiet almost felt too loud. I opened the door, kicked off my shoes at the entry like always, and stepped inside. Amanda was standing in the kitchen, rinsing a dish, totally unaware. When she saw me, she looked startled. "John?" she said, drying her hands. "What are you doing home? I thought you were working in Allentown today." I didn't respond. I just walked past her, straight down the hallway to our bedroom. She followed after me, clearly confused. "John? What's going on?" I didn't say a word. Just pulled an old suitcase from under the bed and started tossing clothes into it. Shirts, a couple pairs of jeans, work boots, socks, underwear. Nothing more than the basics. Her voice rose. "John, what the hell are you doing? Are you going to talk to me?" Still I kept packing. I couldn't even look at her. "Is this about work?" "Come on, you don't just walk in and start packing over a bad day," she said, trying to force a laugh. But halfway through the sentence she stopped. She must have seen it on my face, something in my eyes. Maybe she finally put the pieces together. At last I turned around and looked her in the eyes. My voice was steady. No stammer. No hesitation. I wasn't in Allentown today. Just 7 words, clear and firm. Amanda froze. The color drained from her face like someone had pulled the plug. She didn't say anything. "I was in York," I said next, just as calm. Another simple sentence. Another piece of truth I hadn't planned to share, but had to. She didn't argue. Didn't ask how much I saw. She just turned around and walked out of the bedroom, her footsteps light, her presence suddenly smaller. When I stepped into the living room a few minutes later, she was on the couch. Her eyes were wet, but there were no tears running down her cheeks. No pleading. No begging. No excuses. Just silence. And I walked out the front door. I don't even remember much about the drive after that. I must have been halfway to Hagerstown when my phone started buzzing on the passenger seat. It was Colleen. "Hey Dad, where are you?" I took a breath before answering. "Hagerstown," I said. My voice came out hoarse. "Mom told us you left," she said quietly. I wanted to check on you. Are you okay?" "I'm okay," I told her, though that wasn't quite true. There was a pause. "Do you need anything? Is there something I can do?" I wanted to say 100 things. That I missed her. That I didn't know how to feel. That the ground beneath me had cracked open. But the words never came. Then she said something I didn't expect. "Mom told Brenda and me what happened," she said softly. "Not the full story, but enough. We already knew, Dad. That hit harder than anything else. You knew? I asked, gripping the wheel so tight my knuckles turned white. For 3 years, she said. 3 years. My heart sank. I felt like a complete fool. The signs I'd ignored, the questions I hadn't asked. The way Amanda had seemed distant. Dad, she said gently, please don't beat yourself up. You're a good man. You've always been a good father. You were a good husband. None of this is your fault. I couldn't answer. My throat was tight, my chest heavier than it had ever been. I didn't trust myself to say anything without falling apart. And I didn't want to cry. Not while I was still behind the wheel. Dad? You still there? I'll be okay, I said finally, forcing the words out. Oh, and Dad. Yeah. I paid for everything already. School. It's all set. I'm ready for fall. I smiled through the ache in my chest. You didn't have to do that, I said. I don't care about that, she replied. I care about you. Thank you, sweetheart. I love you. I have to go now, I said, my voice cracking a little. And before she could respond, I hung up. Turned the phone off completely. I wasn't ready for more talking. I couldn't handle another wave of emotions crashing down on me. Later that night, I was having dinner alone at a Cracker Barrel just outside of Harrisonburg. Comfort food. Something warm, even if it couldn't touch the cold I felt inside. As I paid the bill, I noticed a small flyer pinned to the bulletin board near the exit. A maintenance manager job, focused on HVAC systems, full-time, benefits included. I called the number right there at the counter. Spoke with the owner for 5 minutes. By the time I left the parking lot, I had an interview scheduled for the next morning. I'd never actually been through a real job interview before, not one where I had to sit across from someone and sell myself. So yeah, I was nervous. Add in my speech issue, and my confidence wasn't exactly at an all-time high. Still, I figured if it worked out, great. If not, well, I wasn't walking away from much anyway. The place was called Oakbrook Meadows, a small, church-affiliated nursing home tucked back off the main road. It had clearly been around for decades, and the building told the story better than any brochure could. It looked like it had been expanded bit by bit over the years with no real thought to layout or flow. Just a jumble of wings and hallways stitched together like an old quilt. It needed help. A lot of help. Good morning. You must be Mr. Tyson, a man greeted me, stepping out from behind the front desk. I'm Don Watson. Mind if I call you John? That's fine, I said, shaking his hand. We sat down in a small office off the lobby, and for the next half hour, Don walked me through the entire history of the place. Most of what he said just confirmed what I'd already guessed. Oakbrook was struggling, badly. They had over 100 seniors living there, folks who couldn't quite manage on their own anymore but weren't yet ready for full-time state care. Once they reached that point, legally they had to be moved to a government facility. It wasn't just the emotional toll that took, it was the financial one. Outsourcing repairs and upkeep had been eating their budget alive, and Don didn't sugarcoat it. If they didn't get a handle on it soon, they'd have to shut down. Hiring a full-time maintenance manager was their last shot. A kind of Hail Mary. The job didn't pay much, not even close to what I used to make. But it came with a small apartment in the basement of the main building. Nothing fancy, just a space to call my own, and all my meals in the communal dining hall. That was the only real perk. It was more of a live-in position than a 9-to-5. I took the job. The apartment was rough. Took me 3 full days just to get it into a condition where I didn't mind sleeping there. But the food was decent and I didn't have to cook, which was a small relief in a storm of change. What really sold me was the workshop, fully stocked, organized, and filled with tools I didn't even know I needed. There were manuals, bins of parts, and old equipment tagged with work orders that had probably been sitting untouched for years. Air conditioning and heating? That was my bread and butter. No problem there. But when it came to commercial dishwashers, industrial stoves, or built-in refrigeration units, that was all new territory. Plumbing too, those issues popped up constantly. It was like playing whack-a-mole with leaks and clogs. But I took it as a challenge. I learned fast. Figured things out one repair at a time. I didn't have a plan. But for the first time in weeks, I had something to wake up for. One weekend, I buried myself in paperwork, specifically Oakbrook's insurance policies. I had no background in that stuff, so progress was slow. But I wanted to understand what I was dealing with, especially when it came to what was covered and what wasn't. Between emergency repairs, I started taking inventory, room by room, unit by unit, of every piece of equipment and infrastructure that needed attention. I learned quickly to balance my workload, mixing in a few quick fixes between the bigger projects so things wouldn't pile up. Prioritizing the essentials kept the place running. By the end of the first month, I had developed a steady routine. Days were spent fixing things. Evenings were spent making my basement apartment feel a little more like home. I kept my cell phone charged, but I never turned it on. I didn't want to know what texts or voicemails might be waiting. Instead, I used the landline in the workshop for anything work-related, and I tracked everything on an old desktop computer running Windows 7 that someone had probably forgotten about years ago. Don seemed happy with how things were going. He told me the staff appreciated how quickly I responded to requests. That was enough for me. I wasn't thriving, but I wasn't falling apart either. I felt settled. 3 months went by like that. Then one morning I looked at the calendar and realized it was Colleen's birthday. I hadn't spoken to her since the day I left home. That thought hit me harder than I expected. I hadn't reached out, and neither had anyone else. For a moment, that silence made me feel like maybe nobody really missed me. But then again, my phone had been off the entire time. I turned it on, took a deep breath, and called her. "Hello," she answered. "Hey, Cian. It's Dad. Happy birthday." "Dad," she said, her voice lighting up. "It's so good to hear from you. Your phone's been off for months. Where are you? What are you doing? Are you okay? I've been so worried." "Slow down," I said, chuckling a little. "One question at a time." "I'm okay," I told her. "I've got a job, a roof over my head. I'm more concerned about you. How's school?" "It's good," she said. "I moved into a dorm with 2 other girls. It's a little cramped, but we get along. I've been sticking to the meal plan instead of coming home on weekends. Oh, and I got a part-time job at the snack bar near campus. Do you need anything?" I asked. "No, I'm fine," she said. But her voice hesitated just slightly before adding, "Is everything else okay on your end?" I paused. "No," she said, answering for me. "Not exactly, right?" I stayed quiet. She continued. "Mom's not in a good place. She told Brenda and me about what happened. Not everything, but enough. I don't think she regrets it, not really. But she is sorry she got caught." That line stung. "She's working at Zena's, the snack bar in town, but I don't think she's earning enough to keep the house. She already sold your tools. Everything in the garage, gone. Now she's selling off the furniture. Said she might need to talk to the bank soon. Something about the mortgage." I sat there, phone pressed to my ear, trying to process everything. The tools, the furniture, my home piece by piece disappearing. "I think she's planning to give the house back to the bank," Colleen said softly. "It was a good house, a real home. But I don't think she can hang on to it much longer." I didn't say anything. I didn't have to. The weight of it was enough. "Oh, and Dad, there's something else," she continued, hesitating. "Brenda disappeared. A few weeks after you left." "What do you mean, disappeared?" I asked, my voice tight. "She and Mom had a huge blowout, like screaming at each other in the front yard kind of fight. After that, she just left. She sent a postcard from San Francisco. That's the last we've heard from her." I leaned back, stunned. That was the last thing I expected to hear. "There's more," Colleen said reluctantly. "And you deserve to know. Brenda, she's not your biological daughter. Her real father is some guy from Gettysburg. Samuelson. I think that's the man Mom was seeing, the one you caught her with." I didn't say a word. I just stared out the window of my little apartment at the trees beyond the parking lot, the silence in my ear growing heavier by the second. "I feel like I'm the cause of so much of this pain," she whispered. "No, Tsin," I said firmly. "Don't you ever think that. All of this, your mom brought it on herself." She sniffled. "Give me your address," I said. "I'll send you power of attorney forms. That way if your mother needs to get rid of the house, she can. It'll make the process easier." "You don't have to do that, Dad." "I know," I said. "But it'll help her. Might as well make it less painful than it has to be." At Oakbrook Meadows, staff usually ate their meals separately from the residents. Still, I found myself slowly connecting with people, both coworkers and the folks living there. Some of the residents I half-jokingly thought of as inmates, grumpy, mischievous, always keeping you on your toes. One person I found myself drawn to was Ivy James. She was in charge of the laundry room, Oakbrook's sole launderer. I started calling her in my head. If it was possible to break a washing machine or dryer, one of the residents would find a way. Ivy was always elbow-deep in tangled sheets, rattling machines, and soaked clothing. She was in her early 40s, not someone who turned heads at first glance, but far from plain. There was a warmth to her, something grounded. She'd never been married, still lived with her parents, who picked her up and dropped her off every day like clockwork. What made Ivy different? What drew me in was the fact that she was deaf. She wore a small notepad on a strap around her neck, but she rarely needed to use it. Her lip reading was nearly perfect. And when I was with her, I didn't stutter. There was something about communicating with her, mouthing words slowly, using my hands when needed, that made me feel calm. Safe even. Before I realized it, I was spending more time with her than with anyone else. Then, as Thanksgiving approached, Ivy surprised me. She invited me to dinner with her family. Her mother and sister were fluent in sign language, gliding through conversations with ease. Her father wasn't, but he followed along as best he could, relying on them to interpret. They noticed my speech patterns right away and slowed things down without making a fuss. I felt seen. Not pitted. Just included. It was one of the best holidays I'd had in years. After that, Ivy and I began to grow closer. What she didn't know, what I hadn't told her, was that the Virginia School for the Deaf was just a short drive away in Staunton. And I'd already started looking into classes. I signed up for evening classes in American Sign Language. It felt strange walking into a classroom again after so many years, but it gave me something to focus on, something beyond repairs and past regrets. Ivy picked up on the change pretty quickly. She noticed how I was watching her hands more closely, studying her expressions and body language like they were chapters in a book. When I finally told her about the class, she lit up, actually beamed, and immediately offered to help me with my homework. I'd read that true fluency could take up to 2 years, maybe more. But I was motivated. Really motivated. Work stayed steady. My days had structure. I had a place to belong, and now, the beginnings of a personal life. Each passing week took a little more weight off my shoulders. The pain from my marriage didn't disappear overnight, but the sting wasn't as sharp anymore. Then one day Colleen called. "Dad, I'm coming for Christmas." She didn't ask. She told me. And honestly, how could I say no? I reserved a guest room for her at the facility. Oakbrook had a couple set aside for visiting family, and started to worry. Not about her staying with me, but about her meeting Ivy. I didn't know how that would go, especially after everything she'd been through. But I shouldn't have worried. The moment Colleen realized Ivy was deaf, she lit up and immediately started signing. It wasn't perfect, but it was enough to hold a conversation, and they did easily without much help from me. Turns out, she'd taken 2 years of ASL back in high school and had decided to major in special education. They connected instantly. That Christmas was quiet but meaningful. Most of our time was spent with Ivy and her family, sharing meals, playing card games, helping with chores. I still had to step away for the occasional repair. Pipes don't care about holidays, but Colleen didn't seem to mind. She understood. Ivy kissed me under the mistletoe that week and I was caught completely off guard. I blushed like a teenager. Colleen caught the whole thing and laughed like it was the best entertainment she'd had all year. Before she left, Colleen mentioned something in passing, something I couldn't quite shake. "I think Mom's still talking to that Jeff Samuelson guy," she said. "She hasn't said it outright, but I don't know. It's in the way she talks sometimes. Like she's planning something. Like she's looking forward to something." 2 weeks later I got my answer. There was no plan. No attempt at reconciliation. No conversation. Just a letter from a lawyer. Amanda wanted a divorce. No property fight, no accusations. Just signatures on a document that made the end official. I signed everything and mailed it back without ceremony. Still, something kept gnawing at me. Anger. Not at the divorce itself. I had already accepted that. But the way she'd done it. Like I had been some placeholder, some useful presence she leaned on until she no longer needed me. Then she cast me aside like I was just part of the background. I knew better than to dwell on it. I had left. I had started over. My life was moving forward. But even with everything I'd built for myself in those few short months, that truth still stuck in my chest like a splinter. I was genuinely happy, or at least I should have been. I had a stable job, a new place to live, someone in my life who cared about me. By all logical measures, I was moving on. But emotionally? I wasn't there yet. Ivy didn't gloat when I told her the divorce had come through. She didn't smile or show relief, but there was a subtle lightness to her after that conversation. She was the same warm, steady person, but a little freer, like a weight she hadn't named had been lifted. But while her days got easier, my nights grew harder. Sleep rarely came without a fight. I'd stare at the ceiling, thoughts racing, replaying everything over and over. The betrayal. The lies. The months, maybe years, where I'd been used and left in the dark. She was the one who messed up. Yet I was the one left with the fallout. I knew life wasn't always fair, that people often hurt others without consequence, but knowing didn't make it easier to accept. I needed closure. Or maybe just to calm the storm inside me. Monday morning, 6 a.m., I was already in Gettysburg, sipping a bitter cup of coffee at a corner booth in the Ugly Mug Cafe. Outside, fog clung to the streets. I was watching the house across the road, Jeff Samuelson's house. At 7 o'clock sharp, he stepped out, briefcase in hand, dressed for work. I waited until he drove off, then crossed the street. I had dressed up a bit, not too formal but enough to show respect. I wasn't there for drama. I didn't want to make a scene. What I did want, I wasn't entirely sure. I hesitated at the door, then rang the bell. Even though it was early, the woman who answered, Mary Samuelson, was already dressed for the day. That was a relief. I'd been worried she'd be in a bathrobe or pajamas, and this would feel even more awkward than it already did. Yes? Can I help you? She asked cautiously. Mrs. Samuelson, I began, voice steady, my name is John Tyson. I was hoping I could take just a few minutes of your time. She frowned slightly. Are you selling something, Mr. Tyson? Because we're not really interested. No, ma'am. It's not that. This is personal. It concerns your husband. And my wife. She paused. Looked me over. I couldn't tell if she was about to slam the door or ask me inside. Your wife's name wouldn't happen to be Amanda, would it? Yes, ma'am. It is. She opened the door wider. Please come in, Mr. Tyson. I think we need to talk. What followed was 2 hours of conversation. Me and Mary sitting at her kitchen table, sipping lukewarm tea as the sun rose. She wasn't shocked. Not really. She had suspected for a long time that something wasn't right, but Jeff had always been careful. Left no real evidence, just a trail of uneasy moments and excuses that didn't quite add up. She was composed, thoughtful, almost clinical as we talked. That is, until I mentioned Brenda. That changed everything. Her posture stiffened. The quiet, calm exterior cracked just a bit. That was when I knew it was time to go. I had said what I needed to say. Maybe it helped her. Maybe it helped me. I still wasn't sure. But I had done what I came to do. When I got home, I told Ivy everything. I couldn't keep secrets from her, not if I wanted what we were building to mean something. If we were going to be real, we had to be honest. She listened without judgment, nodding gently as I spoke. She didn't say much at first, just reached for my hand and squeezed it, like she already understood. In the days that followed, she made a quiet effort to comfort me, bringing me little things she knew I liked, making space for me to process everything. And gradually, it felt like things had come full circle. Ivy and I began talking seriously about our future. We weren't in our 20s anymore, too old to start a family in the traditional sense, but Ivy brought up something I hadn't considered, fostering or adoption. Her face lit up when she said it, and I saw a version of our future that hadn't been visible before. We started researching together, slowly at first, then more intently. Turns out, our chances of adopting or fostering children with hearing impairments were higher than average. Ivy's background and my work with ASL made us uniquely qualified. The local agencies in Staunton were more than supportive, eager even to help us begin the process. And for the first time in a long while, I felt like I was building a future, not out of desperation but hope. Then one night my phone rang. Dad? It's Colleen. Her voice immediately put me on edge. It was late and she never called me at that hour. Hey, sweetheart, I said, trying to sound calm. Everything okay? Not really. But you don't have to panic. I'm at Baptist Hospital in York. My heart clenched. What happened? It's Mom, she said. She was shot. What? She's okay, Dad. I felt like I had to call you. You've got my attention now. What happened? Colleen took a breath before continuing. From what I've been able to piece together, Mom and Mr. Samuelson were having dinner at a Cracker Barrel. Then Mrs. Samuelson walked in. She had a .22 revolver. Opened fire on them. My stomach dropped. Oh my God. Most of the shots missed, Colleen said quickly. One grazed Mom's arm, her right one. It wasn't deep, but it did need medical attention. She's okay. They're keeping her for a few hours for observation, but she'll be discharged tonight. And Jeff? Her boyfriend? He didn't get so much as a scratch, she said flatly. But the second the shooting stopped, he bolted. Left Mom there. Didn't even wait for the cops. I sat there in stunned silence, trying to process it all. What about Mrs. Samuelson? I asked finally. She didn't run, Colleen said. She just sat down in a chair and waited. Like she knew exactly what she was doing. I guess there's no real reason for me to come down there then, I said quietly. No, it's okay, Colleen replied. I've got everything under control. I'll call you later, promise? How's your mom handling all this? There was a pause. She's furious, Colleen said. I've never seen her this mad before. I let out a long breath. Thanks for calling, sweetheart. Oh, and Dad. Yeah. Keep your schedule clear in early April, she said, her voice softening. Your daughter's going to be there when her dad gets married. I didn't even try to stop the smile that spread across my face. Congratulations, I said, my voice catching just a little. I'll be there. No question. But maybe, don't tell Mom, she added. It'd crush her right now. Understood. When I hung up, I just stood there for a moment, the weight of the past year slowly fading into something lighter. I turned to Ivy, who had been watching me quietly from across the room. I think, I said, we should start planning a wedding. She smiled in that gentle, knowing way she had. And just like that, the chapter turned. And so ended the story of the quiet, even-tempered man who never raised his voice but had once nearly shattered beneath the weight of betrayal. He found peace in a broken-down nursing home. Found love in the quiet corners of a life he hadn't expected. He bought a modest house with his new wife, Ivy, and together they filled it, not with silence but with children. They adopted 3. Fostered more than they could count. Their home echoed with laughter, chaos, and joy. The kind that sneaks up on you after everything else has fallen apart. Colleen graduated and took a job teaching at the Virginia School for the Deaf. She got married a year later. Her father walked her down the aisle with pride in his chest and tears in his eyes. John stayed on at Oakbrook Meadows. He never did leave. The work suited him and he liked being needed. Ivy left the laundry room behind. Her life was full in other ways. As for Amanda, she still works at that snack bar. Quietly. Alone. And Jeff Samuelson? No one ever saw him again. Life doesn't always wrap up neatly. But sometimes, if you're lucky, it rebuilds into something better than you ever imagined.